So today we are going to talk about how to invest in SDA in the Perth market. And I'm going to just run through a little bit of the data that we're currently seeing in Perth, the demand and the supply and where the gaps are. And then I'm going to hand it over to Angad, who's going to talk through his process with Nirvana Lifestyles and yeah, how you can potentially invest in NDIS property over in Perth. So just a little bit about who we are for those of you who are new to NDIS Property Australia. We are advisors and consultants, and we assist investors all over the country to build SDA, Specialist Disability Accommodation. We are based in Brisbane, but we do operate countrywide. We've sold around 200 dwellings in the past 3 years, and we're looking on track to sell at least another 150 this financial year. So we've learned how important understanding SDA investment as a business model is to investors. It's so different to anything else out there. And so we've made it a central part of our business to educate and inform on all aspects of SDA, and this includes the data. So we actually have an in-house research data team who are constantly working on that. We also have the SDA Housing Podcast, and this has been running for over 20 months now. 2 episodes published weekly, over 190 shows recorded thus far, 38,000 downloads when I looked yesterday, and we're currently getting about 3,500 per month. So there are some really good episodes on there. If you want to learn about SDA, there's some in-house recordings that we just talk about a particular aspect in general, or answer questions from potential clients, or we interview people from within the industry. So there is some really good listening there if that's interested. And this is the team I wanted to introduce to you. And moving on, I'm going to be talking about the demand, but just very quickly before that, we actually are recording this presentation, and it will be available to everyone who has registered today. It will be sent out. And any questions that you have, just pop them into the Q&A box down the bottom of the screen. Min is going to be in the background answering those questions as we go. And at the end of the presentations, we will also have a Q&A session. So lots of time to have your questions answered. So no fear there. So very quickly, demand for SDA properties in Perth. This is taken off the most recent NDIA supply and demand data that unfortunately dates back to the end of June. So it's not the most recent. We are expecting a lot of data coming out in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, but this is as good as we've got at the moment. So what we're looking at here is a total of 1,639 participants who've either got SDA funding or are eligible for SDA funding. And I've broken that down into the SA4 regions, as you can see here. And the SA4 region is actually a large, as you can see there, including Mandurah, there are 6 of them that encompass the entire Perth. So they're quite large regions. We can go deeper into that data, into more specific regions, but we haven't for the purposes of this. We just want to give you more of a general overview of where the demand is, where the participants are. So enrolled places. Now, this is actually the enrolled SDA dwellings that the NDIS quotes in their data. It includes all existing and legacy SDA. I'll go into that in a moment. It also includes any new build SDA. So that's anything that's been built in Western Australia in the last couple of years, basically, and has been enrolled as an SDA certified property. Existing and SDA. Now, we don't have a lot in Perth. We do have a lot of older disability homes and institutions that are not even in the system at the moment. So you'll see there's a lot more participants that are supposedly living in SDA than their enrolled places. So a little bit of an anomaly we've just got to work around and just assume that they're in what would otherwise be known as legacy or existing. Existing is an older style home that it can accommodate anywhere from 1 to 5 people, but it doesn't meet the new SDA design standards, so it's not fit for purpose. Legacy are properties that are group homes, 6 people or more, and they will be defunded in the future. The NDIA stated that 10 years after the rollout of SDA in any state, the legacy will stop being funded. So Perth is about 2 years in now, so we've got about 8 years left. So we are looking at a bit of a long-term play here. We've still got a lot of properties there that are in use, but we know that they're not suitable for participants. They're also not suitable for the carers. It's much harder for the workers who go in to look after these people to provide the care, because the houses are just not designed to enable that, to do them efficiently and cost effectively. And that's kind of the whole point of what SDA is, to firstly give participants a beautiful home that they can call their own, and as well to enable the delivery of supports far more competitively. So this total here, 362, is actually places. Now, when I say a place, I mean a bedroom for a participant. That's in a total of 197 dwellings. So it's not a lot of currently enrolled places if we go back for 1,639 participants. Now, I've even taken out now the existing and legacy, and that drops down to 297 places in 182 dwellings. That averages out to about 1.63 places per dwelling. Now, in new build, we do see houses that can, or properties that can house anywhere from 1 to 5 residents. We're not seeing too many of the group homes actually successfully being used as a group home. Certainly on the East Coast, we know that a lot of group homes have only a couple of residents in them, and the NDIA themselves in the recent price review did state that it was recommended that group homes be phased out. So we might even see those average places per dwelling reducing as more people move into single occupancy. Or it might stay about the same, but I think that's also equivalent to what we're seeing on average in Australia. It might be a little bit high, about 1.8 across Australia. Now, what I've done is I've actually taken the number of participants, the number of enrolled new build places, and looked at where we've got the undersupply. And we've got a total of 1,303 places missing in new build for SDA participants. So that, and you can see where the regions are, they're most needed: Perth Southeast, Perth Northwest, Perth Northeast, Perth Southeast. That comes to add that back on that 1.63 places per dwelling. That averages out to approximately 800 dwellings that we currently need to house all currently funded participants. So that is quite huge. And moving on, I've just got into a little bit more data here, looking at the future demand. Now, the number of NDIS participants Australia-wide is 592,000. Almost 51,000 of those are in Western Australia. So out of that 50,994, 3.63% or 1,849 have got SDA funding. Now, the NDIA have stated that they believe over 1 million people are going to be in the NDIS by the middle of June, and that's less than 9 years away now. The estimate, if we look at this 8.61%, the estimated number of NDIS participants in WA would be maybe around about 87,500. And there was another recent report that came out from the NDIA. It was called their demand projections. Now, we're not sure how accurate these are. There's been talk about them being based on maybe somewhat inaccurate data, but just to look at what they're saying, they believe that 2,539 participants in WA will need SDA funding by that date. That is only 2.9%. So what I thought, well, let's say that 3.63% here holds true, and we're looking at maybe 3,180 participants in total having funding. And we've currently got 1849. So we've got quite a way to go. Now, going back to the current gap of 1301 places, and an additional 600 if we take the NDIA's stated number, that leaves us with a potential gap of around 1,900 places, or 1160 dwellings. And this is all using the current averages that we've come across. So if we estimate that the number of SDA funded participants increases in line with current level, then we may require further 350 dwellings. That is in some way compensated for the fact that there are 346 dwellings in the pipeline for Perth. That's on a bit of a side note. What is a pipeline dwelling? It is a dwelling that is either under construction or the planning phase is underway, and the NDIA have had the plans notified to them. So in most cases, we believe those pipeline dwellings will go ahead, but possibly not all of them. So that's just an overview of where we are with the demand in Perth and Western Australia. And I would like to hand over to Angad to...
Thank you very much.
To share your screen and take over.
Let's do that. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll swap this over. All right. Can you see my screen here, guys?
We can.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Debbie. That was always very, very insightful. It's always good to hear the data. And as you said, you know, it's a bit unfortunate that they're so slow in releasing the new data, but I can't wait to see the next report. I think what we're going to see is going to be very, very interesting as well. So let me see if I can hide this part. There we go. Perfect. All right. Firstly, you know, thanks again, everyone, for being here. As you know, there is a Q&A section, so please ask your questions over there. Min is in the background here, so he'll be answering those. Yeah, let's get into it. My name's Angad Singh, and I am one of the directors here at Nirvana Lifestyles. Some of you may have heard me speak before. We did do a webinar, well, it's probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago now. That was really great. Thank you for everyone that supported us and ended up working with us after that. We really appreciate that. So let's get into it. What do we do at Nirvana Lifestyles? So at Nirvana Lifestyles, you can think of us kind of like SDA project managers. What we do is we kind of connect the dots of SDA. So we provide the designs and specifications, we link you up with the provider, and we also link you up with the land developer. So we bring together all of the pieces of the puzzle that are needed in order to have an SDA project. So all of our packages tend to be provider-led. We're very, very close and in touch with our providers and getting feedback from them all the time. And when we meet people that might be interested in purchasing SDA, we basically just connect all the dots and find a location that the providers are seeking, that suits the investor's budget, and will accommodate the type of SDA dwelling that we know is going to be what the market is looking for. So that's us. First thing, I guess I just wanted to get into is we are seeing a lot of attention here in Perth at the moment, not just for SDA, but mostly for all of the other types of property investment that are available. You might have heard some of the things that are going on in Perth at the moment. Perth, in terms of the growth of the market, has probably had the biggest struggles over the last decade compared to any of the other capital cities. At this moment, we are by far the most affordable capital city, and all accounts and all reports are suggesting that, you know, that is going to correct. So we are currently the fastest growing market in the country. We are the most affordable market in the country, and we have a severe shortage of general houses and rentals. What this means, by the way, as the market is so tight, we are seeing an enormous amount of demand for land. So this is coming from first home buyers, it's coming from investors for traditional investment, obviously SDA, and many different types of investment. It's really, really constricting the market and what's actually available, which means it's very difficult to get good quality properties at the moment. We also, from an SDA perspective, are the youngest SDA market. SDA in WA only rolled out in 2019. After that, obviously, we had a couple of years of COVID, so not a lot happened. And so really, we're only just now getting into it. We're only just seeing the first wave of dwellings being completed now. And the vast majority of SDA is yet to come. So obviously, we're very bullish. I think, you know, if you look at Debbie's stats, only something like 200-300 places for circa 1,700 participants who have funding at the moment. So you're starting to see headlines like this, you know, where there is a housing crisis in Western Australia, which is very unfortunate, but it is what it is. We are seeing rents rise very, very quickly, and we are topping the nation in terms of growth for the property market overall. This is all good news, obviously, if you're interested in investing either in SDA or any types of development, because we will see that start to lean into the capital growth that we're seeing in land and all of the other properties that we're seeing in WA. So what we've done is we've created a simple 3-step process to help you get started with SDA investment, right? So basically it works like this. You pick a plan that suits you, you select the upgrades that you would like, and then we select the block that will work. And once we put all of these 3 things together, we basically have an SDA house and land package. We also do these packages for SMSFs, and we work with a charity who can package them up for you so that an SMSF can purchase them on completion. So the purpose of today is really going to be to go through the process, go through our plans and how you select the plan, go through the upgrades and what upgrades you can select, and then how we basically go and you know, find a block that's gonna wrap it all up and suit you. So let's talk about our plans now. We essentially have two floor plans that are available. One is suitable for a 12.5 by 25 block, and one is suitable for a 12.5 by 30 block. Now, these are the 2 most common block sizes that you'll find in Western Australia or in Perth. And we really want to give people an opportunity to have an SDA that will suit either of those blocks. Now, generally speaking, what we're finding is that the locations are really driving a lot of the SDA demand. The reason that we have the 2 land sizes is sometimes if someone's got a tighter budget, accessing a superior location, even if it's a smaller block, will actually lead to a more successful SDA outcome, right? So these are the 2 plans. One is the Nirvana Mini, which starts from about 519, and the other is the Maxi, which starts from 559. As you can see, the plans from a, you know, broadly speaking, are very, very similar. They are both 2 participant homes, which we know is where the market is going. We know that there are major compatibility issues when you start going for 3 participants. So those dwellings have a very high degree of vacancy. And we know that very few people are getting funding for single person dwellings. So 2 people seems to be that sweet spot, right? All of our plans are endorsed by our range of providers. So they've all been through the plans. I think we must be up to version 75,000 or something by now. We've had many, many iterations along the way. And we're in a spot now where, you know, we're very comfortable with how these plans come together. I'll walk you through the plans a little bit, I guess. You can see that they're quite similar. But you can see that the first thing is we have our OOA at the front of the house. This is really important because it means that the OOA can come in and out of the house during a shift change in the middle of the night, whenever they need to, without disturbing the rest of the participants. You will also see that we keep the utility section, the laundries, very close to the OOA and away from the participant bedrooms. This is so that they can run a load in the evening or at night time when people might be resting. The OOAs do have their own private bathroom, which is also very important in case they need to have a shower, rinse off, or any of those things. All of our plans have a large garage with extra storage. The biggest complaint that carers make in a house is there's not enough storage, so we've made sure that we can accommodate that. And you'll see that both of our designs essentially have a participant module, which is a very large bedroom and a private ensuite. In the Mini, these bedrooms are 3.9 by 4.5. Not sure if you can see that, but that is a much, much larger than the requirements of SDA. And there's a reason that we make them that way. In the Maxi, this bedroom here is 4.2 by 6.6. So you can see that it's a very large bedroom. It's actually enough to accommodate a second, you know, small living area inside the room. And obviously each participant has their own private ensuite. We make sure that the participant rooms are separated by a wet area, by an ensuite. This is so that if a person in bed 1 would like to watch TV, a person in bed 2 would like to listen to some music, that they're not interfering with each other. This is absolutely crucial to make sure that people can have, you know, a bit of privacy, a bit of independence without kind of getting each other in each other's faces all the time. And of course, the last thing is that each of them has a private courtyard. We know how important that is to have some outdoor space to sit down, read a book, sit outside, whatever the case may be. Now, a couple of things about the designs, which I guess is one of the key features that we're moving towards now, is really this capability to access multiple design categories. So each of our designs is capable architecturally and structurally, straight off the shelf, to do improved livability, fully accessible, and high physical support. There are some upgrades that you need as part of an upgrade package to have it fully compliant to high physical support. But what we make sure is that all the beams are in the roof that you would need, all the door frames are the right size, all the spaces are sufficient, so that the dwellings are very, very easy to upgrade as and when they're necessary. We're finding that this is increasingly important for participants. And when we get to that point, you'll see why that is the case. Right? So that's the first step. We've got to pick a plan for you. Generally, if your budget between 700 and 900K, we would be leading towards the mini so that we have enough allowance for a good block of land. And if your budget's 850 to 1.1, then we'll be targeting the bigger house. Okay. All right. This is what the house looks like. You can see that we can use multiple different types of elevation, multiple different types of colors, but it should blend in with the street. It should look nice in the area. You can see that we've got nice neutral colors and finishes. Here's the kitchen with the adjustable bench tops, dishwashers, sinks. This is one of the bedrooms. You'll notice that we make sure that the TV is across from the bed, so it's convenient to view without getting a kink in your neck. And there is an exit to the courtyard in each one of the bedrooms. This is the ensuite. Try to give plenty of space to each individual participant. And of course, one communal outdoor living area and one communal indoor living area is also critical. Right? And these are the private courtyards, so you can see that they've got enough space there. Once we've selected your plan, the next thing that we've got to do is pick the upgrades that are going to be suitable. Now, there are 2 upgrade packages available. And really, these are designed to increase the desirability and reduce the vacancy risk of your dwellings long term. So the first package, the first upgrade package that's available is your Class 3 residential care package. Now, for those of you who have listened to our podcasts and listened to us speak ad nauseum about fire sprinklers, about acoustic separation between rooms, about fire detection and warning and safety overall, you'll know what we're talking about with this Class 3 upgrade and why that's so important. And of course, to maximize the income of the property, give yourself access to the biggest participant pool, you can also choose to upgrade your dwelling to the high physical support ready dwelling. Right? So as you can see, the base price for the mini is at $519 and the max is at $559. And you can see what it would cost if we upgrade to Class 3 and then we add the high physical support. So the fully upgraded prices are in the mid-6s, depending on the size of the build. Fire safety. Now, one of the things that we are getting consistently asked for more and more by both providers and participants is the fire safety of these dwellings. It's a very, very hot topic at the moment. We know that SDA providers and steel providers are becoming increasingly concerned that if fire sprinklers are not in the dwelling, that they may be liable in case something happens because the individuals may not be able to evacuate by themselves. We know that the NDIA has confirmed that they're doing a 3-year SDA design standard review, and we know that many of the big bodies like the URBIS and the SDA Alliance, they have already recommended that fire sprinklers be mandated throughout all SDA and retrofitted if fire sprinklers are not within the dwellings. Now, obviously, this gets very, very expensive to do, so our recommendation is always to do it up front if you can, and that will really make sure that your dwelling is future-proof. One thing that we are also seeing is that some local councils, particularly in the southeast of Perth, have started rejecting applications for Class 1 SDA dwellings. And that's on the basis that the people wouldn't be able to evacuate by themselves, so you should be doing a Class 3 SDA dwelling. So this is the first upgrade package that's available. We can include the fire sprinklers, we can include the detection and warning system. This is the best-in-class fire safety, by the way, for your participants. And We also make sure that each room has acoustic bricks to its surrounds to make sure that they get the best acoustic isolation as well, right? If you're interested to know more about fire sprinklers or class 3, check out this podcast that Min and I did together. It's episode 120 of the SDA Housing Podcast, and we talk about this at length. So the good thing with fire sprinklers is you do increase the income of the house ever so slightly. It's honestly, I think they're going to do more with this at the next review, but it does, for a $60,000 investment in fire sprinklers and warning systems and all of that, you do get around $8,000 extra per annum. The most important thing, though, is that it does make your dwelling future-proof, and it does make your house have the best fire standard, the best fire safety standards that are available on the marketplace. And of course, for many people, that it is, to ensure the safety of the participants, it is the right thing to do. So that's upgrade package 1, fire sprinklers, class 3 residential care with fire sprinklers. Now, the next upgrade package that's available is the high physical support ready upgrade package. Now, what this package does to your dwelling is it makes it ready to accommodate a high physical support participant right off the bat. Now, the way that our dwellings have been designed is that you could, in the future, always upgrade it later if you can't do this straight up front. But many people just want to know that it's done, it's finished, and they can start getting high physical support participants straight away, right? What this includes is all of the power and control cabling, the video intercom, and the uninterrupted power supply to the bedrooms to make sure that you have that full high physical support design capability. Now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the participant pool, because I'm not sure if you guys remember this, but about a year and a half ago, we were being told a story by the NDIA about the percentage splits of different types of participants. So what we were actually being told initially was that maybe 2/3 to even 70% of participants would fall into the IL category. And because of that, you're actually seeing a lot of people who are doing IL only designs. And very quietly, with the SDA design review, which came out in June, they did also publish a demand forecast by category. And this tells us a very different picture. What it tells us at the moment is that when you look at the percentage spread over the different categories, at the moment, IL accounts for about 44%, but it's actually going to be decreasing to 36%. And if you look at fully accessible and high physical support, they make up about 50% of the participant pool. Yeah. Robust, by the way, is a completely different category, so we don't usually think of it as the same as these three. But when you start to see splits like this, which is, almost a third, maybe slightly less and slightly more, it really becomes important that your SDA can target all of the different design categories. And if we do that, it does give you the chance to have, the biggest participant pool. So you're seeing that over from 2022 to 2042, we are seeing an increase in the overall proportion of high physical support and fully accessible participants relative to improvability. So that's important, and it's really important to future-proof your dwelling. Okay. Once we've selected your house and we've selected your upgrades, now we have essentially a budget that we can use to select the land. Now, the way that we select our land is, in the first instance, we are constantly in conversations with SDA providers. Now, one of the things that Debbie said at the start of the presentation was just how old the SDA demand data actually is. Yeah. So whilst that's a very good litmus test, it's good to get a guide. What we're seeing when we talk to providers is very much real life, on the ground feedback today. So, we're asking them things like, okay, how many inquiries are you getting a week in a particular region? How many leads are you getting? How many links to your Facebook are you getting? What about your networks? What are they telling you is coming up? And from that, we start to get a very, very different picture about where the SDA demand is, right? At a particular time. Now, obviously, it moves around to an extent, but what we're really finding is that different providers, because of their marketing strategies and because of the networks that they have with different hospitals and referral partners for their SDA participants, they're actually reporting very different demand in different locations. So it's not just about getting the right provider, it's about getting a right provider for a right location, and making sure that the house, the provider, and the location all kind of come together in this nice little fit, right? So that's what we do. We speak to our providers to get a sense of where the demand is, and we get a regular update on the state of the market in that way. We see out of these locations which ones of these would suit your budget. So based on your overall budget and the upgrades and plans that you've selected, we have an allowance that we can spend on land. We select blocks of land that will suit your budget, and then my team will go out and prepare a shortlist. We'll generally look at anywhere between 15 and 20 blocks. Most of them we'll cut off the list because there's something not quite right with them, the orientation is not favorable, the gradients are too much, just many different things that would just make it maybe not ideal for SDA. And what we're usually left with is a short list of about anywhere between 3 and 5 blocks of land that would all make good SDAs. Usually there's, some have a better orientation, but some might be across from a park, or some might be slightly larger. Another might have, another feature that's favorable to it. So we get 3 to 5, all of which we think are good. Usually some different price points as well. And then based on that, you can make a choice as to which block might suit your needs, right? So this is usually the last piece of the puzzle that comes in. And the reason for this is, as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, SDA blocks of land at the moment, not just for SDA, but for even first home buyers, investors, everything is just flying off the shelf. We have such a land shortage coming up that it's insane. So the only time we're able to get a block is actually when an investor is ready to go. If we try to do a house and land package on a block that is on the market, by the time we find an investor, even like a few days or a week, that block will be gone, right? So we're finding that blocks are getting picked up very, very quickly. So it's very important that we have our ducks in a row before we start talking to the land developers. Okay. And now we've got our block of land. So that's the last piece of the puzzle. We can now put forward the plans and inclusions that you have selected. We have a quote from the builder, so you know what it'll cost. You have a letter from your provider who supports the location and gives you an indication of what the income is like to be. You have the exact block that you're targeting. And because now we know when the titles are going to be issued, we can actually put together a project timeline for you as well. So this is how your SDA proposal comes together. And at the end of it, if there should be really no surprises at this point. If you've worked with us along the way, you will know that we should pretty much know exactly what we're going to get along the way. And only if we need to deviate from that, I guess even if we need to deviate from that, we usually have a conversation long before you see your SDA proposal. Just to give you an idea of how these come together, I thought I'd just go through 3 packages that we put together recently. Min, you might recognize some of these. So one of the packages that we recently put together was actually for an SMSF. It is in the brief for this particular client is that they wanted an absolutely premium location and they wanted a premium product. So we found an estate for them, which was about 15 kilometers from the CBD. We found a block of land for them. Because we had to still meet a budget of around $1.05 million, we did elect to go for the smaller house plan, which gave us, access to better land. This particular investor did want to add the class 3 upgrades. They believe in the fire sprinklers, and they also wanted to add the high physical support because the provider believes that there's strong demand for that in that location. For a 315 square meter block, the price of the land was around $420,000, which is a premium location in Western Australia. And the package came together a little bit, pretty much bang on the budget that was expected, right? A package like this might produce around 200K of income if it's fully occupied with high physical support. Participants, Min's team will give you an indication of what the income potential in certain areas and things like that are. But that's an example. A couple more. We did one recently on a lower budget. The budget for this one, for the package number 2, was $800,000. And so what we elected for was the smaller design. And we went to an area where we could pick up 315 square meter blocks of land for sub 200,000, right? In this particular instance, because we wanted to stick to that budget, we did not include the high physical support upgrade. However, this individual, this client, knows that they can add that in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whenever they want to, right? So they're still future-proofed in that way. a package like this at fully accessible will generate around 185,000 gross income. And another one, you know, this particular individual for package number 3 wanted something that was close to the beach. So we went to the northwest, right along the coast there, and we found him a block of land around 240,000. We went for the bigger house with all the upgrades. We were targeting a budget of around 900,000, and that's how it came together. Right now, one thing I will just say is when you start to see these incomes, it can be a little bit misleading because a lot of investors will overvalue the percentage yield. But what you've got to remember is that the better quality of the product, the less vacancy you will have. So when you have a premium product in a premium location, you have providers essentially fighting over the product, you have participants who really want to be in the product. What you end up finding is that those properties actually, when they actually perform, will do a lot better and over the longer term. Yeah, you'll find that we're probably a long time away from saturation, at least 3 to 5 years, but we should be taking a 20-year timescale when we're looking at SDA, right? So for that reason, it's probably more important to focus on the quality of the location, the quality of the product, and the quality of the provider, rather than splitting hairs between 22 and 24% yield. At least that's our experience, right? Last but not least, this is how you engage with us, and this is what the process looks like. So first things first, we have a brief consultation. This is where we get to know you, you get to know us. There will be a link at the end if you want to book an appointment with me to start having a chat. We can go through as much as you want to go. There may be some details that you'd like to clarify. You may want some more information about the plans or the inclusions or the build times or whatever it is that you need in order to make a decision. We can go through that in the first instance. After that, if you want to move forward, what we do is that we request that you fill out an expression of interest with Min's team. Now, that expression of interest obviously will have a blank address because we don't know what the address is yet. And there is a small refundable deposit, which is just to make sure that you are committed, I guess, to the process. So Min's team will organize the expression of interest. From there, we'll work with you to make sure that your finance eligibility and your entity is set up so that when the package is put in front of you, you can make a decision like that. Very, very important at the moment, because if we aren't ready to go, what will happen is we'll put together a package, block of land. If it takes 2, 3, 4 weeks to set up an entity because an accountant's overseas or something, these just fall over. You know, we're finding that blocks of land are selling so quickly. We really, really have to be ready to go as soon as something good becomes available, right? One thing is, if you are purchasing in an SMSF, that does mean that your SMSF needs to be set up and the funds have to be rolled over. Otherwise, we won't be able to move forward past this point, because it can just take a little bit too long. And as you know, with funds rollover, it can be a little bit unpredictable. We work with you. We select the plans and upgrades like we've just discussed. We then prepare our shortlist. And once you're happy with a block of land, then we put that block of land on hold for you. And we have about a week to review the proposal, see if there's any concerns, see if there's any issues with the block of land. Some estates may have specific guidelines, like if there's a bushfire rating or if there's a quiet house package that's required that may affect the cost. All of that is presented as part of this proposal phase. It doesn't usually change much for what we're expecting, because honestly, the build price is pretty much the same wherever you go. It's only the land price that really changes. But you do have an opportunity at this point to review the full proposal. And if you are purchasing an SMSF, this is where any markup costs associated with the SMSF purchase will also be disclosed to you. You will get indications earlier, but this is where it's all finalized, because now we know the exact price of the land, the exact price of the build, and all of those things, right? From there, it's pretty simple. The land contracts are issued, the build contracts are issued, and if it is an SMSF, then the off-the-plan contract for purchase on completion is issued, and we have contracts, and off we go. All right. So that's the process. That's how it works. You work with us, we work with you to select some plans, select some upgrades. Then we go through the location process, and then we present that proposal for you. Okay. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. I guess I'll hand it back to you now, Debbie, and we can do any Q&A or anything else that you'd like to do from here.
Okay. Hi, Angad. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, really informative, and we do have some questions that have come in that some of which you might need to answer. From Troy, does the HPS upgrade at a later date? Is it still a similar price of 50,000?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Now, there are several things that need to go into a HPS upgrade. Yeah, so let's just talk about that. So one of the HPS upgrades is the beams that have to get put in the roof to accommodate the hoists. Yeah, they're very expensive to install later, and that's why we do it even when we're not going for the HPS upgrade. So those expensive upgrades are included in the base package. Yeah. All the main things that need to be upgraded for our HPS upgrade is really just the electrical. So the electrical can very easily be added later, and I expect it to be a similar price, maybe a little bit more, but not much. Maybe 55 or maybe 10% more, something like that, because now they just have to climb through the roof space to attach their cables rather than going through before the ceilings are in and having a lot more space to play around with. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it would be a very similar price, and it's been designed that way so that we can minimize the upgrade cost in the future.
Great. Awesome. Thanks. Another one from Troy. Is it necessary to purchase in a trust entity outside of super?
That's probably a question for your accountant. I can
Min
say that
is shaking his head,
yeah.
so I'm guessing we would say no. It's
No,
not.
we a lot of most buyers buy under the individual name. Sometimes they invest in a trust structure, and that allows them to claim the GST and the build price there. It's optional there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. From an anonymous attendee, he's asked a few questions, or 3 different anonymous attendees. I'm not sure. He'd like to see Nirvana's future-proof options other than fire sprinklers. So obviously I can tell you a couple of those straight up are things like private courtyards, additional storage space, larger than normal spaces and rooms everywhere. Anything else, Angad, you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we think about SDA is it's like the backbone, and now you can bolt on upgrades, right? So what does future proofing look like other than fire sprinklers, which are very, very hard to bolt on later? And I think pretty much anything else that you want could be installed at a later date. So because we've already got, all the walls are masonry, you can put in grab rails wherever you want, you can mount in TVs, all the walls have double cavity leaks. If you want to install kitchenettes into the rooms, that would be quite easy to do. I think that all the future proofing options are generally quite easy to add on. And once we get it ready for fire sprinklers, once we get it ready for HPS, I think what you've got is a very high quality SDA dwelling that is very adaptable to the participant needs from there, right? If there's something specific that you are looking for or asking about, happy to answer, but I'm not sure what other future proofing options might be on your mind.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different future proofing things that you can consider. A lot of them are quite minor.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Angad can accommodate a lot of those requests.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Also from anonymous attendee, what are the build times like in Perth? I've heard they can take 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, so we're seeing that coming right down now. And I think that we are at a place now where once we get to site from slab down, we're seeing completion in 6 to 8 months. Let's call it 8 months to be conservative. Now, remember with class 3 builds, the one thing WA is really slow at is all our council approval times. Although I hear that's not just WA, yeah? What we're finding is that the total project timeframe from the time that you sign a contract is generally about 12 months. The build time itself is probably 8 months from the time that the building permit is issued, but maybe 10 months, 8 to 10 months, from the time that the time that the deposit is paid, so we can lodge a building permit. From that moment on, it's probably about 10 months, and maybe 8 months from slab.
Right. And another question, how big are these small blocks of land typically, the ones that Angad is referring to? So you did mention that there was one unit on a 315 square metre?
Yeah. So in WA, we have what's called an RMD. It's residential medium density design code that applies to a lot of the new estates. So even on smaller blocks, we can use things like boundary walls to get really great design outcomes. So what we're seeing is that a 12.5 by 25 block can accommodate an SDA, which is 315 square meters or thereabouts, 300, that sort of range. And the 12.5 by 30 is around 375 square meters. So they're about the sizes that we can go to. What we do want, though, for the SDA is that frontage, because we want to make sure that we have the dimensions enough to have a private courtyard on the side of the house. If the lots start to get narrow, then we can't create those neat little spaces for the participants.
Yeah. Okay, from Caesar, please provide clarification on the provider letter.
So
yeah, take it away, Angad.
Yeah, so what the provider letter is generally they will have had a look at the property, and they will effectively provide a letter saying that they have that they would like to take on the property and what they expect the income to be from the property. Depending on the provider, often at this time they may also send you a preliminary agreement, which is, if you think about it, it's kind of like it's a one pager. It tells you what their fee schedules are. It tells you what some of their values might be. It tells you who you can call if you want further information and that kind of thing. So the provider letter is really a letter from the provider to verify that they understand the property and to give you some comfort around that.
Yeah. What is the vacancy rate of an SDA? Well, I mean, that's kind of a bit like asking how long is a piece of string. It varies hugely around Australia and from area to area. What are you seeing in Mina's got answers? Okay.
25% vacancy rate for FA, apartments and robust houses.
And a much lower rate.
And a much lower rate on average across the HPS and IELs at 7.5 to 10% vacancy. That's more so at the very start of the build, when it's just vacant at the very start as they find procure participants at the very start. Yeah.
We do know that it can take anywhere from 3 to 9 months to fully tenant a property.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why, by the way, that's why it's so important to have your provider on board right from the get-go. So what we want to do as soon as that slab goes down is when the provider should start marketing the property, because they're going to need 3 to 4 months to procure people. What you generally find is the first participant comes through pretty quickly. The second participant takes a bit longer because they have to make sure they're compatible. And by that, that whole process can take 3 to 6, even 9 months, I guess. So very, very important providers are engaged early. Just on the vacancy subject, the NDIA, they've modeled their funding around a 10% vacancy rate. So that's what they're expecting across the board. What we are seeing, like with all property, is we see a two-stream market. We see some properties which you just cannot fill. And then we see some that you are getting people inquiring about, that you can fill them 10 times over. Vacancy seems to really be a function of the quality and the location of the dwelling itself, right? We also see that different providers have very different vacancy rates. And the reason is because, if someone's got a referral network at Midland Hospital, for example, they are getting leads and participants that are coming out of that general hospital that they can put into their dwellings. If someone doesn't have that network, we're finding that they're really, really struggling to fill those houses. It's amazing how much of this market is really done by word of mouth referrals still. It's not like realestate.com where everything is listed. A lot of it is done by person to person interactions. Is that your experience as well, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, thank you. B, is it easy to convert back a normal residential property if the property is not SDA fit after 10 years or something?
Sorry, what was the question? Is it normal to, or
is it easy to convert back to a normal residential property if the property is not SDA fit after 10 years or something?
Yeah, I don't think there's that much. The way you should think about SDA is it's everything a normal house can do and some, right? So you wouldn't need to take anything out of the house to make it a normal house. You could tomorrow move in as a normal or someone without a disability, let's say. Normal is probably not the right word, but you could use it for any purpose as it is built. Yeah.
I believe in some of the properties I've seen, the bathrooms in a high physical support may look a little bit more institutional. You know, you might want to just do some upgrades to the bathroom, make them look a bit more. They're beautiful big bathrooms.
Yeah.
Just make them look more appealing, more storage in them,
Yeah.
take out the disabled toilet. Other than that, yeah.
Yeah, we actually we had a long discussion about how to put storage into the bathrooms with the interior design team, actually. So it is a thing. Like a lot of them, if you see them, because the sink has to have the capacity for a wheelchair to slide under it, a lot of them don't have any storage space whatsoever. So, but what we've done is we've actually created a vanity cabinet next to the sink. So we've tried our best to make it appealing to many different demographics.
Absolutely. And of course, if you have built a good SDA property in a good location, you're not going to need to rent it back on the open market in 10 years. We don't see that happening because it will be future-proofed. Yeah. Okay, Dave, is there a requirement for the property to be furnished?
Great question. Often now the SDA providers are requesting that you furnish the properties. Yeah. Different SDA providers are requesting different things. It doesn't seem to be standardized across the board. What we're seeing, generally speaking, is that they'll ask that you contribute towards the furniture in the common areas, and the participants will furnish their own dwellings. To give you an indication, the cost of furnishing the house for a typical 2-participant house like this would be in the range of 10 to 15K. Min, would you like to add to that? I think you've had some feedback on this as well.
Probably 20, 25K fully furnished. Partial furniture is by 15K, yes.
Yeah, so most of the providers we're working with will want the participant to furnish their own bedroom. Is that your experience, Finn? Yeah. Okay,
James, are you guys actually achieving 2 participants in these dwellings, or generally just 1 participant? What's the average? Sort of partly answered earlier in the question regarding
the average is 2, and the only reason we get 1 in their house is because there's an oversupply of houses in the area. We found that a lot of in those oversupply markets in Brisbane here, like Caboolture and Logan, there's a lot of 1 participant tenant houses because there's too many houses in the area. But when the balance of supply and demand equilibrium comes into place, then we're looking at 2 as an average as per normal.
Yeah, and as Angad did said, it can just take a bit longer to get that second participant in.
Yeah,
because there's a lot more that goes into matching not just personalities, but they need to have compatible care rosters and schedules and funding. So there's a lot that goes into that side of it.
Yeah, and one thing to add as well is remember the care providers are heavily incentivized to get that second room filled. Yeah, what we often find is that the first participant comes from the SDA provider, the second participant comes from the care provider. Because for them to actually deliver the care in an economic way, they need to share it across 2 people. Yeah. So once one room is filled, they are highly motivated to get a second person in there. Otherwise, they just can't deliver the care service that they need to.
That's right. Shubham, as the investment cost is high, if we couldn't sustain the property after completion, as there might be a vacancy, so can we sell it back? If yes, then in how much time?
I'll answer this because I've seen a lot of this resale process. If you bought it for $900,000 and you want to sell it for what you paid for it, then it'll be sold very quickly, for sure. The problem is most resellers want their money back plus a little bit profit. The average resale is 1.1 to 1.2 million. That's what I'm seeing a lot out there. It's always 1 point something. They want their money back plus more because they've been through so much pain and vacancy and extra costs. So it comes down to what you're selling it for. If you want a quick exit and get out of it quickly, break even or a little bit of loss, then it'll be very quick if you lower your price expectations. It also comes down to really, is it in an oversupplied market or in an area of high demand? So there's always more buyers than there are sellers, and it'll be easy to move the house if it's empty and you want to get out very quickly. It's easy. The question is what the price is, the strike price for exit. That's all.
Yeah, and there's certainly no time limits or anything. You can sell it even before it's completed, should you wish. It's property sale. End of the day, that's all it is. So we have one last, again from an anonymous attendee. Hello, I have land in Northeast. Can we go through your process till the end? but using my land. Land is NDIA compliant.
Look, long and short of it is yes, if the land is suitable to the plans and everything else. Now, what we would need to ensure, though, is that the block of land fulfills all the other criteria that a provider is looking for. NDI compliant, I'm not sure exactly what that means. However, we do know that the providers that we have very specific, nuanced criteria that they're looking for. At this moment, what I can say is that they are generally pretty happy with, if it's 10 to 15 k's from a hospital, near public transport, good amenity, good outlook, all of those things. So assuming that you've got that in your land, then yes, it could work. And then it's about seeing whether one of the model plans that we have that they have endorsed will actually fit onto those blocks. Remember, with SDA, when you start making changes, it can become very, very difficult, because now the whole process, the whole certifications, we need to actually get them from the get-go. When we know that we've got these pre-certified, it gives us a lot of confidence to know what we can do. So there may be a slightly different process, but in short, it is possible, and we can have a look at your block and see if it might suit.
Okay, thanks, Angad. James, do you guys do a dual occupancy style investment option dwelling?
Not really. Dual occupancy does have some benefits, but generally we're finding that 2-participant SDA is the most desirable. The only time we might consider dual lock in an SDA context is for robust participants, but generally, if we are doing robust, we would be doing them in single participant villas. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I want to respond to this question again here. The SDA market has not been around long enough to see the vacancy drop to the standard residential 3%, 4% standards we've seen for the last 20 years in Australia. When we say 25%, I mentioned earlier, it was specifically to only 2 certain products. One is the robust housing. The other one is it's actually 50% vacancy for FA apartments. It's a weird anomaly. I don't know why. I think mostly because people prefer HPS apartments. But the standard is that 10 to 12% as a vacancy, and it depends on what areas, as in regional, remote, metro, and what design category. You're going to see different vacancy numbers for robust versus HPS versus IL, houses versus apartments. So it's always going to be different, Mr. Anonymous. Always different. Yeah. And until we see a few more years go by, there's not enough statistics or proof in the pudding for us to present any real data of actual vacancy or occupancy yet. It's too early at the moment.
Yeah, let me add to this a little bit, because this is quite a good question and quite important to get to as well. When they calculate vacancy rate, there's an intuition that maybe the vacancy is if you look at how many properties are available on the market and how many of them are filled. That's not what vacancy rate is. Vacancy rate is calculated on the basis of time. How many months of a year, or what percentage of a year does a property typically sit vacant? Yeah. So it's important to understand the distinction there. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, when we look at a property, it's not just the property that has to fit. The participants also have a degree of funding, which they need to now accommodate within that property. So it's like a lock and a key. If either of them don't fit, the whole, the deal doesn't work. What we're finding, the reason vacancy rates are so high in robust is because the typology that has been built for robust has typically been 2-person homes or 3-person homes. The problem with robust participants is that very, very few can share. Yeah. So what that means is you should expect a robust dwelling to essentially show any 2-person robust dwelling to essentially have a 50% vacancy rate at full occupancy, because it's just unsafe to put someone in, two people with that type of disability together, except in very rare circumstances, right? Yeah. I can tell you that even though the vacancy rate right now in robust is the highest, it has got nothing to do with the capacity of an individual to fill a well-designed, fit-for-purpose robust dwelling. In fact, we've just done 7 villas of robust, and providers are actually basically wanting all of them. And if you give them a single participant robust villa, because that's how the typology works, that's how the funding is being allocated to individuals, So if you give them that, they'll fill every single day of the week, right? This idea, what happened was a lot of people ended up building these two-bedroom single participant apartments. Do you remember this, Min? Yeah, because if you looked at, if you go back 5 years and you look at the funding schedule, those things were just off the charts in terms of the percentage return. And investors made the mistake that we spoke about earlier, which is overvaluing the potential yield of a property. That's only one of the considerations. It should be viewed in the context of everything else that you're looking at. So when you got these dwellings, which were designed basically to maximize a spreadsheet return that just did not fit the typology that was being funded or was in demand, that's why we got that disconnect with the vacancy rates, right? What we're finding, generally speaking, is like that two-stream market. Like we said, properties that are in demand are very much in demand, and you can fill them over and over. Properties that are not in demand are very much not in demand, and they're really struggling. 3-participant homes often aren't ever getting filled beyond two people in a house. Is that your experience as well, Min? And Debbie?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
So those vacancy rates are very skewed at the moment.
Indeed. Well, that is actually the end of all our questions. So,
Great.
Yeah, I think there were some very good questions in there. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Again, this recording will be sent out to everyone, so you'll all get a chance to go over the slides. You'll get a copy. Min would like to say something.
I'd like Angad to explain the birth of the brand Nirvana Lifestyles as compared to Sedana, what you've been known as. Can you explain to us the structure, the background of why it is what it is?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So many of you may have seen me before. I am the director of a building company called Southern Constructions. We're a boutique builder developer, I guess, in Perth. We've been around for maybe seven years now, I think, operating, and obviously we were developing long before we became the company. The reason that we created the brand Nirvana Lifestyles is because SDA is very, very distinct from the other forms of development, townhouses, SDAs, and those types of things. And we really wanted to start putting together a team who can reach out to providers, who can start really separating itself from the parent brand, or at least being distinct for the purpose of SDA development, right? So Nirvana Lifestyles was basically born out of a need to become more SDA focused within our company, and have a team that is dedicated to SDA and needing the right people that can make projects succeed in SDA. So yeah, that's how Nirvana Lifestyles came about.
But more importantly, Angad, there are multiple builders working beside Sedana underneath Nirvana to help de-risk the process as well, isn't it? Give comfort to investors. Yeah.
So one of the you guys have probably heard about the labor shortages and the trade shortages and everything that's been plaguing well the country, I guess, but Perth especially bad. And I think one of the questions was around how long is it taking, because people were hearing that it was taking up to 24 months to build a single-story house in Perth at some stage, which was true, right? So what we ended up doing at that stage was we started focusing on our geographical region, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't taking on more work than we can deliver. So in order to do that, what we started doing was we started partnering with other builders who could also help us deliver our product. So we would design the product, we'd design the specifications, we'd put together the whole package, and other builders may step in if it was too far for us, for our supervisors to reach or something like that, that another builder would step in and build that for us. So this was happening before Nirvana Lifestyles as well. And it just allows us to deliver, I guess, to a larger geographical location. And obviously different builders have different trade bases. So it means that our trade base doesn't get overloaded, and we can use trades from other builders as well. So yeah, we often use other builders to help us. And Nirvana Lifestyles just allows us to do that as well.
Thanks, Angad. Okay, any other points anyone wants to add? No, I think we're done then. Well, thank you so much, everyone. These, as I said, the slides and the recording will be sent out in the next day or so. And thank you very much for your time and joining us today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and week.
Okay, brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, guys. Have a good day.